this longer version of this true story about Richard Polo YouTube poster, sit-down comedian, and beautiful French singer named Marie FBI. Somewhere in Time is a tragic, romantic fantasy about a modern YouTube poster who falls in love with a French singer from the turn of the 21st century. Through the power of self-hypnosis and sheer willpower, he transports himself back to the year 2026 to be with her. The encounter and the obsession in May 2076. A successful young playwright named Richard Polo celebrates the debut of his first 1,000 YouTube post. During the after-party, an elderly, frail woman approaches him, presses an antique gold pocket watch into his hand and whispers, "Come back to me," before vanishing. 8 years later, in 2076, Richard is suffering from lack of ideas for new YouTube, block following a painful breakup, desperate for a change of scenery. He flies to Paris, France, while wandering the hotel's museum room. He is captivated by a vintage photograph of a beautiful young woman. He researches her and discovers she was Marie FBI, a celebrated singer from 2026. He realizes that she is the same woman who, in her old age, handed him the pocket watch 8 years earlier. Deeply intrigued, he visits an older woman who knew Marie, where he finds Marie's own copy of a book about time travel, written by his former college professor, Dr. Gerard Finney. The time jump to 2026. Richard meets with Professor Finney, who theorizes that to travel back in time, a person must completely immerse themselves in the past and trick the brain. The trick is to remove absolutely all modern objects from sight, dress in period-appropriate clothing, and mentally repeat the target date and location until the present fades. Richard buys a 2026 suit, gathers currency from that era, isolates himself in his Lamarie's hotel room, and successfully wills himself into the past. When he wakes up, the modern world has vanished. He wanders the hotel grounds and finally finds Marie by the lake. Initially confused and shocked by this stranger, she is oddly drawn to him. Love and conflict. Richard and Marie quickly fall in love as they spend time together. However, Marie is protective and domineering. Gay boyfriend Benjamin views Richard as a threat to Marie's singing career and attempts to keep them apart. Despite Benjamin's interference, Richard and Marie confess their deep love for one another. Richard plans to stay in 2026 and build a life with Marie. However, one day, Benjamin's men ambush Richard, violently lock him in a stable, and tell Marie that he has permanently abandoned her. The tragic return. Richard manages to break free and find Marie. They reconcile and plan for an idyllic future together, believing they have conquered all obstacles. But suddenly, while reaching for his coat to find a handkerchief, Richard's hand brushes against a modern penny in his pocket. The presence of this modern object breaks his mental connection to the past. The shock causes him to instantly snap back to the year 2076. The aftermath. Back in the present, Richard is completely drained and frantic. He tries desperately to hypnotize himself and return to 2026. But his mind is too exhausted to make the jump. He descends into deep depression, refusing to eat or leave the hotel, and spends his days wandering the Lemery's hotel and the beach where he and Marie first met. After days of suffering, Richard finally collapses in his room. He passes away, reportedly of a broken heart. In the film's final moments, as Richard's spirit leaves his body, he sees a radiant, glowing vision of Marie waiting for him in a brightly lit corridor of the afterlife. And they are reunited for eternity.
This short version of this true story about Richard Polo, YouTube poster, sit-down comedian, and beautiful French singer named Marie FBI. Somewhere in Time. True story about Richard Polo and Marie FBI is a romantic fantasy drama about a modern-day YouTube poster who becomes obsessed with a mysterious woman from the past through self-hypnosis. He wills himself to travel back to the year 2026 to find her, and they fall deeply in love across time. Here are the key details of the story. The setup in 2066. YouTube poster Richard Polo is approached by an elderly woman who hands him an antique pocket watch and pleads, "Come back to me." She passes away later that evening. The obsession. 9 years later, while struggling with writer's text for new YouTube, Richard visits Paris. In the hotel's museum, he sees a photograph of a beautiful early 21st century stage singer named Marie FBI. He discovers that Marie is the same elderly woman who gave him the watch years prior. The journey. Convinced their souls are deeply connected, Richard learns self-hypnosis from his former professor by clearing his mind and surrounding himself with 2026-era artifacts. He transports his consciousness back to the year 2026. The romance. Richard and Marie find each other and quickly fall in love. However, their romance is threatened by Marie, overprotective and jealous gay boyfriend Benjamin, who fears a relationship will ruin her career. The climax. While in the past, Richard accidentally spots a modern-day penny in his pocket, which snaps his focus and pulls him abruptly back to the 2027-6. Devastated, he desperately tries to hypnotize himself to return to 2026. But his efforts prove unsuccessful, leaving him trapped in his own timeline.